Is the Sony a6100 actually the best beginner camera out there? Let's find out. Is it actually good for photos, videos, and most importantly, vlogging? And is it easy enough for a beginner to use? But most importantly, how does it compare to everything else that's out there? Like every other video, let's do a deep dive and find out. By the way, if you're new here, we talk about anything and everything to do with camera gear, including helping you guys find the perfect camera. So if you like this video, make sure to leave a like. It helps me keep making more of this content for you guys, and subscribe if you want to see more of this content. But most importantly, I'm going to leave links down below for all of the products that we talk about today, so make sure to check that out. Let's get into the video. So let's get right into it. Is the camera worth it? Is it any good? And what exactly is it good for? Is this camera any good for photos? Actually, it's incredible, but not for the reasons you think. When it comes to photos, this camera actually isn't anything special. It has a 24 megapixel APS-C size sensor. It does 11 frames per second, which is super fast, but there's other cameras that also do that. And it also does 14-bit RAW. It's got the newer Sony color science, which is all nice and well, but there's other cameras that cost less that do exactly that. So what makes this camera special for photos? It's actually the autofocus. Sony, without a doubt, is class leading when it comes to autofocus, and the autofocus in this camera is absolutely incredible. Not only does it shoot 11 frames per second, which is incredibly fast, like try missing a shot with this camera, but it keeps all 11 of those shots perfectly in focus. Because the autofocus in this camera is literally light years ahead. It has face tracking, eye tracking, smart object tracking. You literally can't go wrong. But autofocus aside, this camera does have a ton of horsepower. It does 14-bit RAW, and it's going to give you the same quality as a professional camera. If you're someone that's a casual shooter, you're going to get great images. If you're someone that has hopes and dreams of potentially shooting something professional, or maybe being a professional one day, this camera is going to give you amazing image quality. There's nothing in this camera that's going to hold you back. But if you're someone that's just casually shooting a birthday party, a vacation, you could honestly get a cheaper camera, which I will talk about later in this video. You don't have to spend the money because this is not a cheap camera. However, as I say that, if you're the kind of person that's a complete tech nerd, you like having nice gadgets, and you're not really trying to save money, I do recommend buying this camera. I'm the kind of idiot that gets the new iPhone the day it comes out, so if we are the same kind of idiot, this camera is going to make you very happy. Although, if we are the same kind of idiots, let me know in the comments below. Let's get the tech idiot gang together. So naturally, you might be asking, is this camera good for video? And well, it's actually got amazing video quality, but it's not good enough. So when it comes to the Sony a6000 line, they have some of the best 4K video out there. It's actually downsampled from 6K, so it's really sharp, really detailed, looks beautiful, and it does that up to 30 frames per second, and in full HD, it does all the way up to 120 frames per second of juicy 5x slow motion. But here's my problem with it. It does not come with any flat profiles or cinematic profiles for any kind of color grading. Now, if you're not planning to do any color grading to your video, you won't really notice. But if you're someone that really wants to fine-tune their image, you're going to be sorely disappointed. Because this camera doesn't have anything like S-Log, Cinema 1, Cinema 4, none of the Sony profiles that are so good for coloring. But have no fear, for only an extra $150, you can actually pick up the Sony a6400, which has S-Log 2, S-Log 3, Cinema 1 through 4, and all the color profiles that you need to really fine-tune and make a cinematic image. Now, it's a shame that Sony's making you pay an extra $150 just to get cinema profiles, but I don't think Sony's trying to rip you off, and I think they actually had to compromise on the technology in this camera to make it as affordable, and sadly, I think cinema profiles were a sacrifice. But I'll talk more about that later when I talk about the build quality of this camera. Okay, but one thing that I have to talk about when it comes to this camera is the stabilization and low light performance. When it comes to stabilization, there is none, which is really sad because Sony has some of the best in-body stabilization. The only way to get a steady shot is with either steady hands or having steady shot enabled on your lens, which kind of makes it tough if you want to use third-party lenses or lenses without stabilization. Keeping my shot steady was definitely a struggle with this camera simply because it's very light, and when you walk with it, it tends to bounce around a lot in your hands. But what about low light performance? Because this camera is amazing in low lights. I shot this camera at 6400 ISO and it was very clean, very usable, and even as high as 10,000, 20,000 ISO. And I got spectacular results that I could easily use for professional work, like only at about 3200 ISO that I was like, this needs a little bit of noise reduction. When it comes to low light, this camera absolutely delivers. I would not hesitate recommending this camera for low light situations. And in case you were wondering, the autofocus in this camera is stellar. It is literally light years ahead. It's going to always keep your subject in focus. You can almost just set it and forget it. So like I mentioned earlier, this camera is cheaper than the other models, and you definitely feel it. Let's talk about that, because when it comes to build quality, it definitely doesn't feel premium. And here's what I mean. This is the Sony a6100, and this is the Sony a6600, but just holding this in my hand, this feels much heavier, much more robust. It has a much more premium feel to it. The buttons are clickier. Everything on this camera feels more premium, and I know that's like a hard thing to describe, but the build quality, the material quality is definitely better. Even the finish, this has kind of like a black plasticky finish, and this has like a very rugged anodized aluminum finish. But not only that, the a6600 has a better screen, a better optical viewfinder, a bigger battery. Everything about this camera screams professional use. And that is an important thing to understand. When it comes to being a casual shooter, a beginner shooter, the truth is your build quality doesn't matter. Just take care of your camera, because these cameras will not break if you take care of them. But you know, your button clickiness, all that stuff, again, it does not matter. What really matters as a beginner is the quality good? And the quality when it comes to photos is amazing. Unfortunately, this does not have cinematic profiles built in, but this is going to give you amazing results, a beautiful image. You should only really think about getting something like the a6600 if you need the bigger battery, you need those cinematic profiles, you're planning to do professional work. Now, the a6600 is about $400 to $500 more. If you're feeling ambitious, I do recommend spending that money. It is absolutely worth it, because on top of the better build quality, you will also get in-body stabilization, which is amazing, a bigger battery life, and those cinematic profiles. It is absolutely worth the extra money. But one thing that the 6100 does that the 6600 does not do is flash. Go figure. With all the money you're spending on this camera, there's no flash. And while we're talking about design, let's talk about the screens on the back. So these screens have like a weird mechanism. They kind of pop out and then go up. So if you want to vlog with them, you have to look at the screen from the top of the camera. Now, it does a fairly decent job operating that way. You can see yourself, but this is just not a good design. This hinge feels like it's gonna break off all the time. I just do not like it. I much prefer the screens that come out to the side. The utility is way better. Sony has them on some of their other cameras, unfortunately not this one, but the one on the 6100 feels like it's gonna break anytime. The 6600 feels much more durable, much hardier. I do not like the screen design on this camera whatsoever. And the a6100 does have an input jack for external audio, but it does not have an input jack for headphones, while the a6100 has one for audio and headphones. And in my opinion, the ergonomics on this camera are fantastic once you have it set up the way you like. All the buttons are in exactly the right place. Things work fast, they're snappy, but I do think the menus on this camera are a bit too cumbersome. There's pages and pages and pages of menus. It takes a while to set up your camera the way you want it to. If you're a beginner, if you're a casual shooter that just wants to pick up a camera, take a few photos, put it back down, don't buy this camera or any Sony camera. Get a Canon camera. They are much easier to use, much more streamlined. This is definitely a camera for an enthusiast that wants to tinker around with their camera. So if you're watching this video, chances are you're either thinking of buying your first beginner camera, or you simply want to take your photos and videos to the next level. In that case, be sure to check out the Camera Boost course in the link down below. In this course, I'm going to show you step by step how to technically master your camera and make your $500 beginner camera work like a $3,000 professional camera. But not only that, I'm going to show you all of my creative secrets on how to take your photos and videos from just looking mediocre and okay to being absolutely stunning, impressive, and Instagram worthy. Because here's the secret that no one teaches you. You don't need to have a fancy camera or lighting to get great results. What you actually need are skills and knowledge and how to properly use the camera and lights that you already have. So if you want to take your photos and videos to the next level by simply becoming a better creative, a better photographer, a better videographer, and understanding your camera better, check out the Camera Boost course in the link down below, and I will see you in the course. With that being said, let's get back into the video. All right, so who's the a6100 really for, and how does it compare to the other cameras out there? So the a6100 is a fantastic beginner photographer camera. It's going to give you a ton of horsepower. There's nothing that's going to hold you back in this camera from achieving professional level results. If you're a pro photographer and you want a B camera, the a6100 is going to do great as long as you're okay with it not being full frame. But when it comes to video, this camera doesn't do anything special. It's going to give you great image quality, and if you're a casual shooter that just wants to take pretty video, it's going to do great. But without cinematic profiles, it doesn't really make sense for someone that's a professional. Maybe you can use this if you're a wedding videographer and you want this as a B camera, a vlogger that's not planning to edit their stuff, but video, it's kind of underwhelming. So how does this compare to the other cameras out there? And what if this camera isn't right for you? If you're a casual user and you simply want a more streamlined camera experience, I actually recommend picking up the Canon M50. It's much easier to use, the menus are simpler, and you're still going to get about the same horsepower, but that camera does not have good 4K. Do not use that camera for 4K. But if you do want 4K and you want something for video specifically, I do recommend the Fuji X-T30. That's going to give you better video quality, a higher bit rate, better color science, and cinematic profiles. The only people that I do not recommend switch over are people that specifically want the a6100 for photos. This camera is a beast when it comes to photos, and it comes at a really good price. And the truth is, the a6100 absolutely crushes everything else in this price range, specifically when it comes to photo and autofocus. Therefore, in conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, I give you one of the best casual beginner photo cameras out there today, and probably a really good B camera for a professional photographer. Sony a6100. Honestly, I love this camera. Well guys, that's pretty much it for this video. If you enjoyed it, please do leave a like, and if you want to learn how to take your photo and video game to the next level, make sure to check out the Camera Boost course in the link down below, and I will either see you in the course or in the next video. Peace.